Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
She Blaze.
And I am Dashita Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis. Hey, sis.
On today's episode of She Blaze, we're welcoming everyone back for season 5 with the Kiki and Catch Up. We're discussing the White House cannabis policy, post-election legalization, and new states eyeing a regulated market.
Woo! Well, welcome back. Welcome back. Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. How's it going?
It's been a little bit. We've been on a break, a long break, but a much deserved one. So I'm excited to be kicking off season 5 with you.
Yes, me too. So much has happened.
I know. So we definitely got to, of course, get into the tea, but why don't we start things off with the high of the week? And I'm just excited because I get to share a new brand. And you know me, right? It gets to the point where I am always about what am I trying and what am I liking? And I tried this Not Pot CBD glow oil. And, I have skin issues that are adult acne plus autoimmune flare-ups on my skin. And this is the truth. It literally is just 2 ingredients. It is hemp seed oil, which we know and we love and we find is helpful for skin, but it's infused with 1,000 milligrams of CBD. And so it's a broad spectrum infusion. And yeah, I love it. I think you can ingest it, you can put it on your skin, but I've been using it as my face oil. Okay.
I know that's right. Well, your skin is popping, sis. Yes. Well, my high of the week is another one that I've done from season 4. So I decided to bring it back around because word on the street is my sound was muffled, and I've been using it a lot more since our last time talking about it. And that is the Boundless Terp Pen XL. Now, this is my favorite tool to use when I am on the go and I have some concentrates with me. It is an electric concentrate pen. The mouthpiece is automatic, so the battery turns on without any needed button. The coils heat up at 3 different levels: green, blue, and red. I prefer the green level because sometimes it'll shock you. And then it's perfect for anything that you want to keep contained because the bottom piece that covers the coil is magnetic, so you never have to worry about losing the top.
Wow. Okay. Well, definitely. First of all, I love that it's pink. Of course, I said that it suits you. And I love the automation around with the mouthpiece, and it doesn't have to be like something you turn on and click on. I mean, I don't mind shopping for vape pens, but I do think sometimes we get a little bit out of this world with some of the technology. It's like, I just want to put it to my lips and let it work. Thank you.
Yes, and they have a bunch of different products and tools to use, from concentrate to dry herb and replacement pieces for your actual device. So I am here for Boundless Terp Pen XL, and that one is the breast cancer special edition. So, I am fancy, sis.
Okay. Well, ooh, this is already, high of the week. Just, I can't wait to try that. But I know you got the tea, and I know we got a lot to kiki about. So let's jump into our hot topics. How about that?
Yes, and good morning to everyone that's joining us. Our first hot topic is real juicy because we're talking about the White House firing staffers for cannabis, and we'll give you a little bit of a sneak preview on some of the White House cannabis policy in general now that they've confirmed different seats. So this has been going around all on the streets. Joe Biden's administration has fired young staffers for admitting to cannabis use. Is it 2021 or is it 1920? Please, someone let me know, because last I checked, isn't DC legal? If they come from a legal state and it's still in their system, even, is it legal? And if they used it years ago, even though they should still be using it, should they still get in trouble for it?
Well, inquiring minds want to know. I mean, I was just like amused by what the Twitter world looked like after this happened, after this broke, because we all know that Madam VP Kamala Harris has also admitted to previous cannabis use. The story, when it broke, it was not a surprising thing. I mean, I said on my Twitter that I was never riding with Biden, and this is exactly why. I think that he never really has been able to understand the medical or the medicinal value of cannabis, because it also says that if you are someone who is suffering from various autoimmune challenges or PTSD, or you want to transition from opioids to that you're being prescribed to something that is more natural and holistic with a cannabinoid treatment, you can't work for the White House. And I totally understand the federal implications, but there are also all this evidence that shows that the government knows that there's medicinal value, including a patent that they have. So it's just like, I'm tired of being, in these situations where there's this shame that's put upon it, because I guarantee all of their parents are telling you, I told you not to say what the truth was, or I told you not to do that. And that's not really the message that we promote, obviously, with cannabis. And that's not the message that I was expecting from this Biden-Harris administration either. So out the gate, that's an automatic side eye. Not to mention that we are working on the federal level to legalize. I'm a part of multiple federal work groups, and this just doesn't make any sense. And so when I saw it, I laughed. And then he tripped up the stairs going onto the plane same day. That became a meme. It was like, God don't like ugly. Sorry, Biden, but
no, God does not like ugly, especially because they did ask their staffers not to use cannabis during their actual employment. And these things were from previous, just admitting, being honest. That really grinds my gears, because they're saying that it was informally told. They didn't even have the goal to be honest with them, that, hey, we actually did not like you using cannabis previously. So I'm definitely struggling with that. I'm struggling with Joe Biden's ancient history of some of the things that he's allowing people to have versus not allowing people to have. I understand that he wants to end racial inequities, but basically you're not doing that by firing your young staffers for using cannabis and being honest about it.
No, and being honest about it. That's like, this is an integrity issue. Some folks would have said, hey, this is why you don't be honest about it. But why is there shame associated with cannabis consumption, particularly when you are located in a place where cannabis legalization has already occurred, and there are surrounding states that have medical programs as well, and people are medical patients as far as cannabis usage is concerned? It just doesn't make sense to me, but I do think that it also begs the question as to whether or not the same policy applies to the Madam VP, because like we all know, she has said that she herself has used cannabis. And I just think it sounds, like you said, archaic. And it's why maybe there needs to be a retirement age as far as politics are concerned. This is a nearly 80-year-old man, and I don't think we're going to really convince him, now that he has lived the span of cannabis propaganda, that those things aren't true. He's so part of the system that he doesn't even recognize the system, on him anymore. He is plugged into the matrix, and we cannot pull him out. It would be, I think, too late, and it would actually probably hurt him,
Right.
honestly. Where blow up his brain on what actually he don't recognize and don't know. But
yes, and he had the nerve to say he's willing to run for a second term. It's like, brother, you need to retire, okay? But we do know that the president doesn't always directly affect cannabis industry and cannabis policies, and so he did have different people get approved by the Senate, and now they are in their different seats. And right now, it seems like we may have at least one ally in the administration, and that is the Secretary of Department of Health and Human Services. Lord, please don't let me mess up this man's name. Xavier Baraka.
Pretty good.
Okay. Okay. And so let's be clear, he did criticize the Cole memo repeal. He also protected cannabis in California as the attorney general. So, we have one ally.
We have a couple. I mean, I think that he has even the NIDAs, which is the National Institute of Drug and Substance Abuse. He has appointed a few people that understand how cannabis can play in those spaces to improve those spaces, and that is a little bit, at least, not as concerning. However, I do agree with you that the policy that he is implementing here with his White House staff will ultimately, I think, at least pause someone who may think something else who is leading an agency. It would make me pause. It would make me pause like, wait a minute, who am I reporting to? Who am I working with? And no one has really come out on the record, not Madam VP Kamala Harris. No one's come out on the record to say, hey, this is wrong, that I've seen so far. Now, we will bring you the tea, of course, if somebody is like calling them out. But until then, it sounds like they're complicit in it. And that is why I'm giving the whole Biden Harris administration a side eye on it. I don't want to be oppressed by any measure of living. And the more that we pretend that cannabis is all about vices and, we're just trying to turn a blind eye to the past vices, the less of a service we do for cannabis as science, cannabis as medicine, and for people like myself who are patients. And, you recognize what type of privilege it is for you to live outside of these draconian laws.
Absolutely. And like you said, a lot of the administration has not said anything about their stance on cannabis. And so we have an attorney general, Merrick Garland, who, he's come back into the Senate fold plentiful of times trying to be in different positions. During the Obama administration, he actually wanted to appoint him to the Supreme Court. It was denied. And so now he's coming back and he's approved for attorney general. However, we have not heard a peep about him and his stance on cannabis since 2013. This is almost a decade since we've heard his stance on cannabis. As far as he was concerned, as a judge who ruled over the safe access case suing the DEA, he said, we're not scientists, and he ruled in favor of the DEA. Though we know the DEA ain't scientists either. They more like the AFT as far as I'm concerned, ATF. So it's like, what are we even saying right now? So, again, we don't know where people are standing. We're hearing these reports. So cannabis may not be under attack the way it was under attack with President Trump, but cannabis may not actually be any of a priority for this administration. So who knows where it will go?
That's fact. I mean, I think the work is definitely going to have to happen with the legislative arm of the government, and we shall see. I'm, exactly where I want to be, being able to be influential and digitally so. Thank God for some things that we've learned out of COVID is that you don't got to be there to be involved, thankfully. And we will keep everybody posted on what's happening on the legislative end of things. I'm just excited to see that the states are slowly but surely getting it together, and that is where ultimately the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely. And I'm pretty excited to see how states will actually challenge their laws on cannabis legalization. And with that being said, we got to go into hot topic number 2 to talk about some states. And this is post-legalization on the election ballot. So we know that there was literally a sweep in voting for cannabis in America's society of 2020. People want cannabis, y'all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, some of these states aren't giving them.
That's why I said we won. Now we work, okay? Because it is real in these streets.
Yes, and they are putting in a lot of not so good work in South Dakota. As we talked about it last year, we made some like, we think it's going to happen, but South Dakota, they're a little weird in some of the way they believe their laws should be. So we were quite nervous about it. And it seems we should have been, because a South Dakota judge basically voted in favor of law enforcement suing the election ballot for their adult use cannabis.
Wow. So it's like a mic drop on it. You get a popular vote that legalizes. And in South Dakota, they were very unique because they had two ballot initiatives. They had one for medical and one for adult use. And the medical one was the more prioritized one, essentially saying that if that didn't pass, then adult use could not pass. But that was the only thing that really connected those two ballot initiatives. And the way that they have been, I guess, undone, if you will, is all on a loophole in the Constitution for South Dakota around bringing to ballot initiatives multiple bills around the same topic. Now, what I said in our fourth season around this, when we first heard about this, is that we've always seen medical and adult use as separate bills. It has never really been the case that we've seen them tied together. I mean, California legalized medical use in 1996, y'all. That was 25 years ago, okay? And so, yeah, I think it's just important for us to recognize that this is a new precedent that's even being set by this decision, because that loophole, in my opinion, does not apply, because these have always been two separate initiatives, two separate issues. And the only thing that they share is that it's cannabis related. That's it.
Yes, and you definitely pointed out a fact of that they're not thinking anything wrong about the medical marijuana bill. They're leaving it be. It's going to happen. It is a thing. It is South Dakota law. But as far as adult use, it is not South Dakota law. It will not take an effect in July of 2021, which it was supposed to. And so, I mean, they're trying to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court. But ultimately, honestly, these are just constitutional laws we never hear about, right? Like, these are laws that are drafted in like a 300-page of some weird font no one reads anymore. And where they're pulling it out during these moments of progress. They don't pull it out just to pull it out because it's Tuesday. They're pulling it out when the people make a movement and people are making progress. And so I am really concerned that will every state have these type of unheard of laws from who knows when come to the forefront when it's time to be progressive?
That's a real big issue I have as well. I think that the unconstitutionality, when it's common sense or when it's things that, really don't align anymore with the prevailing thought, means that the Constitution probably has to be looked at again. I also think that I'm not sure I agree with the unconstitutionality, because like I said, the precedent has always been that medical cannabis, any bills, are separate from that of adult use. And we have, 25 years of history to show that. And so this, governor, which it really started with the governor, followed by the police bureau, using state money, basically, if you're a South Dakota resident, they're using your money to undo your vote. That's the part that I feel is like, we're the advocates in South Dakota.
Oh, well, they are suing them. There's allegedly going to be a lawsuit for that, as they still push their lawsuit to the Supreme Court. So the advocates in South Dakota must be listening, because as far as we're concerned, you cannot use tax dollars for that. And
yes.
That's the real tea. But even more tea, Arizona, they are post-election legalization as well. This is Arizona's not the first time they've tried to legalize, but this is the first time that they actually got it done. Mm-hmm. And what happened was 100 medical marijuana dispensaries were and cultivation were ushered into the adult use legalization bill. And, they're definitely trying to figure out how to implement the balance between medical and adult use, because they already had a very large medical market and patient population. Now, everybody and their mama literally ready to get cannabis, and they made it legal. Yes, they do have the ability to home grow, but some people just want that thing immediately, because home grow does take a while.
And you don't know what the hell you doing, right? Like at the end of the day, I go to Whole Foods because I maybe cannot grow it in my backyard. I want the organic, but I'm gonna go to a farmer's market because that is not my area of expertise, right? So you're right, though. This is one of the first times we're seeing a very large and pretty well rounded assortment be transitioned into adult use. Every place else that we have seen, it is nowhere near the penetration that you need to get within the state. And so it will be the only other state that I can think of that may surpass this is if Florida decides to transition into adult use, or when Oklahoma decides to transition into adult use with nearly 400,000 patients already. So Arizona, with about 300,000 patients, has certainly been growing year over year. We entered the market in Arizona. The assortment is very comparable to what we expect to get in a legacy market. And I would say by and large price point, because it's a medical market, it isn't like over the top, right? There is some extra read all about it branding, and they still have the driest weed in the jar usually. But what I will say is that for the most part, if you are a shopper, and Aunt Latifah is a shopper.
Okay, shout out to Aunt Latifah, y'all. Shout out to our aunt.
She know the deals before we even, are really understanding how she's got them on her pad. She's going inside the stores. And so to get the real deal footage from her of what it looked like when they merged the two markets and the lines that were like wrapped around the parking lot, like, I'm thankful that I was not there for that. And also that being a medical patient means that there are some priorities that they put in place too. That's an important part.
Yes, I'm glad you talked about that, because how did they balance? Well, they did implement special checkout times, special checkout areas, special shopping hours, but they were still running out of things. And medical patients noticed that they weren't getting as many discounts on products that they used to, because they're now running out of the products, right? Yeah. Like the products are definitely, they come in, they go out, they come in, they go out. So you don't have the same discounts. Yes, they try to do a discount with the medical patients, but to a certain extent, it's like, you're missing out on money doing that. How would you do that? You have to now be this bigger license and pay this bigger fee, so it's going to be quite a balance. I'm very curious of what cannabis will look like by the end of the year in Arizona.
Me too. And it's definitely one to watch. They do have an equity program that they integrated as well. I'll be watching that one for sure, because, this is one of those states that started with 5 licenses, has done a lot more diversification that has happened over the last, and stratification of the market, not as much vertically integrated. And that has improved the market, if you ask me. But it also brings in those still big MSOs that are operating fairly cheaply in an Arizona market, and building brand equity. And now we finally get to have some equity operators. So we'll see how that lands. It's definitely race neutral language, meaning it's about, that's what it's officially called, race neutral language. They're trying to capture, this is like the weirdest thing, and you can't solve for it. You're trying to capture giving, opportunity and equity to specific racial profiles, but you don't want to put that in the actual law. They want it to be race neutral. We've shown that doesn't work necessarily, but in their case, they have some, essentially opportunity zones, and the same concept of where you live, and maybe some affiliation as well. It isn't the most comprehensive equity law. I'm not surprised though, because this is Arizona, but the advocates are on the ground. And I will say, by and large, the industry has transformed to something that is a lot more diverse, and therefore more voices calling for equity versus when we first started 5 years ago.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with what you're saying. And, I do believe that they will have different lanes and avenues. Before, it was definitely big MSO. And I do believe there'll be a lot more boutique small businesses, boutique deliveries, and people will have more access to, honestly, more products and better flower, because the more boutique businesses you have, the more craft you can make cannabis happen.
Absolutely. Agree with you there.
Yes, and so we have to get into one more state that, we love talking junk about because it is our one of our home states, New Jersey, y'all. Okay, because we know there was a lot of drama going on when we ended season 4 last a couple weeks ago, because now we brought back season 5 in 6 weeks. Quick turnaround, y'all. But basically, we called them out. We called the governor out. He was stalling. We called them out on making some terrible laws, not really considering over policing. And then they did that terrible, what did he say? Like, legal cannabis is from the dispensaries, and, weed, marijuana is from the streets. Like, what in the racist stuff was that, you guys? So we have to talk about all that tea.
Well, you nailed it. It was a lot of ignorance and a lot of implicit biases that these progressive white males that are leading New Jersey have brought to the table. That was a very frustrating 4 months of my life, because I voted for public question number 1 as a New Jersey resident. And to see the governor who ran on a cannabis legalization platform and, in my opinion, got elected as a result of some of the advocacy push from the cannabis industry, I was appalled, and I still am. And I feel like he's tried to rectify, but I'll never forget, 6,000 individuals were arrested between November and January when he finally decided to sign or pen the deal. And the truth is, it's not like we had a great deal from the beginning. We had multiple progressives saying that this was the most equitable legalization in the country, but the word equity wasn't even in the 210-page law. We reported on all of that, and when we finally got it to some place that we could be proud of, to have the governor stall on a topic that really should never be in question. It's about over policing under 21. And so, yeah, I not only was annoyed because of what work we did and his stalling and people still being arrested, but he's stalling because he wants to put police hands on our children still over what? A plant that is now legal? That's not the way. That's not the way that we are going to change this. That's not the way that we are going to improve any use from that age group, which, by the way, has still been one of those leading groups of use and trial since forever, since the 70s, since when our parents was that age, right? And then when I was that age. So it's like, you want to know about bud, you ask an 18-year-old, okay? Just be real. But, let's make sure that they're understanding about cannabis as well, and closing the gaps on the bro science and the real science, and ensuring that they're able to capitalize on what is a whole bunch of healing and health opportunity within cannabis, and it's not just relegated to you did something wrong and now you have to spend time in juvie, or you get a police officer to violate your civil rights. I am not here for it, and the governor needs to hear it, and he needs to pay for it. That means you lose votes, bruh, unless you're showing that you're doing something differently.
I completely agree. And he's not doing anything different. He is really doing the same promises that he promised before. It feels just too performative. Like, I need you guys to do more. You guys do the bare minimum. I don't know if you feel like you're getting paid the bare minimum, even though I feel like most lawmakers are in upper middle class or elite class. So, again, I don't know how you feel like you're getting paid to do the bare minimum, but ultimately you got elected, you got put in this position to do a job, and that is to serve the people. And the people are tired of getting our children locked up. The people are tired of over policing on cannabis and plenty full of other things. And it just, I'm glad they make some of the revisions. They're, allegedly trying to make more amendments to the bill. But again, I mean, it's just not enough. And we're tired of not enough ultimately. And so I was kind of disappointed with the actual governor saying that statement. Like, it is blatantly racist to say that statement.
He definitely wasn't informed, but here are some things that people should look out for. The Cannabis Regulator Commissioner chair is Yana Wainu, and she's a Black woman. They just did, in a crazy turn of events, they just appointed Charles Barker, who comes out of Cory Booker's office, or Senator Cory Booker's office, and he's a Black man. And I'll be real, I think he might be the first Black man in one of these type of cannabis regulatory positions. And definitely, I'm not trying to say that I'm right. So if I'm wrong, please, by all means, leave in the comments if you're watching or hearing or listening to us later. But yeah, no, they made some moves, but I will be real. And I was real with the governor. I'm gonna be real with my own folks. NAACP made some smoke about it. They threatened a lawsuit because they didn't see a Black man in the chosen group of the commission. You know what? That is not a bad place to be involved and say, hey, we raising our hand on it, because it has been, especially in New Jersey, Black men specifically, that racial disparity in arrest is no joke. And we should absolutely be looking for ways to rectify that. And that means sometimes coming from a perspective of, does the person even understand? And a lot of times white men do not, because that's not the life that they lead. I'm being real as a Black woman in that spot. But NAACP needs to stop fronting like they've been part of the conversation from day one. We've been saying this from the door. The fact that they wanted to, now hold up the process, considering how many people have been arrested, considering how long we've been trying to get them to talk about it. If you've been talking about social justice for 50 years, but you have never once broached the subject of cannabis legalization, certainly in the last 25 years, you have been missing the point. You've been missing the cause of a lot of our mass incarceration, the cause of our community disinvestment. And as a result, I'll be real, that means that you can't lead me at this point. Right. And therefore, you should probably not be leading in the conversation. I need them to step up. We were the first at the NAACP National Convention. We went multiple years. Our booth was visited by quite a few people who still believe in the sort of only buying and selling parts of the legacy market and not understanding the vastness. But cannabis legalization is a social justice issue, point blank and period. And NAACP has not been there. They, in fact, have been a block, as well as some other Black and brown leaders, particularly in the Congressional Black Caucus. It will be great to see in 2021 how they get behind the people who are already leading in the national conversation on cannabis equity, which is, by the way, health equity. And that's something that we need to be at the forefront on.
Well, we need to stop playing like the NAACP has moved past some of these propaganda from the war on drugs. As far as I'm concerned, I appreciate the NAACP. I do not want to be an ageist. I do not want to say they outdated, honey, but I do want to say that they were started over 100 and some years ago, and they have not been able to reform some of their ideologies since then. Therefore, are they really serving the people in the way that is needed, or are they just another arm of the corporate matrix? I don't know. I am definitely struggling with some of the things they've done in other states, but I am thankful that they did put up a fuss, because, that is somebody who has the direct ear of Cory Booker, someone that that's championing the cannabis decriminalization, legalization, or at least releasing the brothers out of jail. Okay. So if that's somebody that is that type of champion, then yeah, put him in the position. And as far as I'm concerned, New Jersey is so diverse. We need another ethnicity up in that position too, because we need real diversity. One or two is not diversity. It is about the actual group and how the proportions should match is the demographic of the area. And Jersey is very, very diverse.
It is. The last thing I'll say is that we still have to build this Office of Cannabis Management that they've got. They have a lead that needs to be hired or selected for overseeing the minority and disadvantaged, disabled vet and women's office. I hate that name, but there is a sub office that is really all equity focused, is written into the bill. And yeah, who they have at that helm is going to be really important as well. We want people who really understand cannabis competency. They're not afraid of cannabis to be leading that. And also at the same time, a long time ago, put together that cannabis legalization and equity are related, not someone who was new to it. So you need both. And that's what my recommendation is for New Jersey.
Well, we'll see if they're listening. So on to our main topic, our highlight topic, because this is one of my favorite things we talk about when we go on break and come back. Because at the beginning of the year, I always feel like everyone wants to legalize. We're going to do it in our budget. We're going to do it in the actual session. We're going to, just let the lawmakers implement it, whatever. So we'll actually see what's going to happen. But there are a lot of states eyeing legalization, interesting enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're first going to talk about Tennessee because, believe it or not, the South is hungry. Maybe it's because they did not do what they needed to do during the pandemic, but they basically are like looking for revenue fast. And let's talk about it because they're right under Illinois. When you start getting sandwiched in by legal states, they're close to Michigan, you're going to want to get legalized too. And with that being said, there was actually a Republican representative that brought a cannabis medical marijuana bill to the floor. So they're just trying to get medical use, period. So they're trying to maybe do like a Mississippi. I don't know.
Well, Mississippi is definitely one that we had some struggles with, obviously, because people try to jet what the folks voted for there as well. I think all of these states, I've been on calls with Texas, Tennessee, Georgia. At the end of the day, we see that the South, Louisiana already has a medical cannabis, albeit only 4,000 patients. We are seeing that an older population within the South is finally starting to, put advocacy on the ground to legalize, to be offered the opportunity to, even if it's what we considered, some folks will say bad weed. I don't agree it is necessarily, but this idea of low THC flower. I think what I don't agree with is forcing flower to be in those parameters and you being potentially arrested because you have hot flower in some of these states. That I don't agree with. But having a low THC cultivar or growing in that way is not necessarily a harm. We need all of it. And that is the type of market. You used to call it the hemp light or hemp remix type of market because it's closer to a hemp level of THC in the flower that they're producing. A lot of these markets will also not include flower itself. It'll be, trying to get to the oil or concentrated versions in order for them to make it appear less like the legacy market. What concerns me about this also is just none of these bills are equitable and none of them have that as a focus, not from a racial perspective, certainly from a patient equity. Yes, if you are willing to brave the system and get the recommendation and all of those things, you can get better treatment. That's just period, right? I'm fortunate and privileged to be able to travel to do so, but that's one of those things that I feel like I'm always watching when I look at places like Tennessee.
Yes, well, they are actually not giving us a hemp remix with this bill that they crafted. And I do love hemp flower, but sometimes people want regular THC. We don't want a herb grown poorly just because you're trying to reach some made up level of THC. You know what I'm saying? I want the THC, the whole plant, the broad spectrum. I also want to be able to have access to all types of products. Like I love transdermal patches, and just having a CBD one is not necessarily what someone with my energy level needs. So, I do think that Tennessee Medical Cannabis Act was a little bit more along the lines of Mississippi, in a sense that this would have been having flower and a full product assortment.
Okay.
it was also the only difference is they restricted it for the patient. So fighting cancer, chronic, severe, and other conditions, epilepsy. So they basically want you to be sick to have access to this type of cannabis. However, they did not state what type of physician or medical professional will be able to prescribe cannabis. So that's always very interesting in the language. However, even though it moved past the committees, it moved past the House, it did die in the Senate, y'all. So it did not have any legs to stand on. And they had so many concerns about it constitutionally being valid that the Senate just chose not to move upon it. So again, another state Senate that blocks progress. Why are these people in the Senate even still? What's going on?
Well, you know what? Maybe progress is blocked for the universe, because let's be real, Tennessee has an ability to be a major player in the hemp side of things, and they are not fully there yet. And we know from the work that we're doing with the Cannabis Health Equity Movement that there's ways away for them to capitalize on the land, underutilized land, both Black owned as well as Indigenous owned, even white owned at this point. They're just underdeveloped. There are a few bigger hemp companies that are predominantly white owned that are, coming to play in Tennessee. But I sometimes struggle with people, especially legislators, being the people to decide medicine related things. They don't do it for anything else. It's like, I definitely don't want Tennessee to be necessarily deciding. I'm not necessarily going to outwardly say, hey, you should just continue to use the legacy market. But if it's there, then listen. If that's what you need for your medicine. But there is thankfully, like one of our comments is saying, like there's a lot that can be done with hemp flower, and hemp flower is starting to really become very specialized, and it always has been good flower, but some markets, especially in the legacy market, you're probably calling it Reggie's, or it's being disrespected because it doesn't have the high that folks are looking for, but it does have a whole bunch of other things, including all of the flavonoids, including all the terpenes, and including all of the cannabinoids, right? With CBD being the most prevalent by the genetics of it, and THC by the man-made law of it being the lowest. But it is an important plant, and I know that slaves grew hemp in Tennessee. There's plenty of opportunity for Tennessee to figure out it within that market, and I think then it'll be a much more equitable and understandable transition into anything related to the high THC.
Well, we'll see. But we got to get into more states, because Minnesota, it's griping its eyes at legalization, and it's trying to fix their medical marijuana market as well. As we know, they have been bankrupt for quite some time. So they're like, listen, these people are legalizing. They're close to us. We got to figure this out, and we got to figure this out now, because Minnesota is the leader. We are not followers. Okay. Shout out to Minnesota.
We have a lot of love for Minnesota after spending almost 4 years there, and living in Minneapolis, or in a suburb outside of Minneapolis. And so, yeah, I'm excited about Minnesota. And, I was confused earlier, but now it's all making sense. This is the one that got to worry about Illinois and Michigan really paring down to it. I was like, what part of the map is ice on with Tennessee? But I get it now. Now it's like, okay, well, listen, Minnesota has been having a lot of questions, because Wisconsin did some really important stuff around hemp, and that's right, I think, below. We used to look at the map and being from the East Coast, and it would be like, where the heck are we? In the middle of the country, right? Towards the north. But they have a lot of opportunity to get better. Their legal market right now is one of the worst, and it is if not the worst. Why? Because three vertically integrated operators, 3 licenses given out, no flower, all given the same oil, expensive as F. And so
they losing your information too. Remember, they have that audit in season 4, remember they had that audit and they was like, they just had papers in the back. They ain't know who the patient it was to.
Exactly. So it was really not well done. And I'm really proud of advocates on the ground like Marcus Harkis, who is like a one-man nonprofit advocacy organization legitimately. And he has been leading the Legalize Minnesota campaign for years. And I've got an opportunity to, of course, work with him on a couple different educational pieces. But then when he made that call, was like, sis, I need you to come and testify. I did. And I was excited because of way COVID is, I could be there without any issue because we did so over Zoom. And I dropped some gems for them and I let them know. And as a former Target executive and resident of Minnesota, like I lived through the time where there was no medical program at all. And I was a closeted consumer. And then they got a medical program and I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, we know our uncle lives there. He's got lupus. Should I refer him to this program? No.
Probably not.
And so I'm excited. I was talking to Uncle George and I'm like, guess what? I think Minnesota about to legalize. And this bill is pretty good, y'all. It's pretty good. They were listening.
Yes, the bill is probably top tier. When we say they lawmakers earned a check, they earned a check, and that's why we root for Minnesota so much. And yeah, I guess my whole thing is, how long would it take to be enacted? Their bill is good, but we know that it could take a long time. And again, it has not passed the Senate, so we're still waiting to eagerly hear what people have to say. But we definitely want to give a shout out to them and you testifying, because people, if you're cannabis conscious, cannabis high level competency, we need you to travel around the world virtually to let these other people know that cannabis is a thing. It is medicine first and always, and that it should be legal, period.
And how it's legal. I mean, I was sad to say that opposing testimony came from Black leaders of churches. There are a lot of people, and they would be not necessarily wrong in believing this, that don't think that you have to couple the social justice components, because Minnesota has also had a huge racial disparity in arrest, with the legalization, marketization of cannabis components. And everybody's been trying to do it. And I think that this is probably one of the better bills. We'll end with the best bill right now that's out there that's doing both. But to that leader's point, no, you're right. We don't have to do it together. They could just stop arresting people and they could just let people use it. But I also think Sam was there, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and they were peddling the same old stats from 2018 that have not actually taken into account how much more we know even now around what happens with cannabis legalization. So of course I had to remix a little bit and go off the script and give them a little bit of like, that didn't make any sense. But yeah, that's what we're up against. If people don't come to the table, while it might do well in their assembly part of their legislative arm, the Senate will cause some trouble if we haven't gotten enough testimony that is clear. So I was really excited about seeing so many people come to the table with their real story, moms, which is a really big, important part of this, and women who are executives like myself and understand the importance of cannabis medicine, and the fact that an adult use market is not an indication that we're all trying to do cannabis cup. Adult use market is really just about access and expanding it. I should not have to join a regulatory system from a medical registry perspective to be able to go get cannabis if I'm over a certain age.
Right. Well, you definitely helped us catch that tea and that shade. So, whatever that means is, as y'all ask your lawmakers to legalize, you better be getting out into these churches, folks, and reminding that these people in the pulpit that cannabis is medicine first and always, period. So we got to go on to another state that actually did legalize, but the bill was not so great. And that is Virginia, you guys. So this is the South, honey. The South is tired of being left in the dust. And so the Virginia House and Senate approved adult use marijuana. Okay. And it's not going to be legalized, catch this tea, y'all, till 2024.
Yeah, so you know what? I don't want to say the Virginia bill is bad because we know Virginia. And so there's a part of me that has to shout out the folks that have been on the ground doing the work there. They have moved the needle way more than we expected. And it was actually a real trap because the DMV, with the D and the M having legalization around it, guess what was happening in the V? Arrests. So that's what was happening. Okay. So we've gotten to a point now where with Virginia first doing decriminalization. We talked about that on season 4. Now is the next step, but that doesn't mean that these legislators are there. These are still predominantly old white men who believe in using cannabis to arrest predominantly Black young men. And that was what was still happening. So decriminalization is the first level. And the next level is what I call this lightweight agreement that it needs to legalize, but just not right now.
Yeah, it needs to legalize right now though, because what happens in the interim? Does everybody get locked up? Does everybody go to jail? Yes, we know Virginia did decriminalize, so people are not going to jail for what they consider, because not what I consider, because I'm not going to even tell y'all how much I be having on me, but what they consider to be an acceptable personal use amount, and they pulled the fine down all the way to $25. But still, why do I have to pay $25 for something we both agree should be legal in the first place? So it's like, why are you even trying to get my coin?
Well, that's what governments do. They okay. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. And governments that are used to doing it with systemic racism as the backbone have a real difficult time letting it go. And so that's why when I said I don't want to say the bill is bad, is because we understand Virginia and we understand what that southern swing is going to be like. We were just talking about the craziness happening in Tennessee. Georgia want folks to keep their marijuana or their flowers in prison in order for them to have a license, right? So we have these real scared tactics that are being infused in the legislation and the inability to let go of the past. So I do agree that we'll see less, hopefully, arrests over time, and it isn't, fully decriminalized, meaning there's no penalty at all. But they're so concerned still of, control. And so we have to watch Virginia. We also have to stay engaged. Some of the things that'll be happening over the next few years is more focus groups and work groups and the like, in order for the governor and the legislative arm of the state to really, finalize the next layer of the bill. They have some real interesting things like equity designation being linked to HBCU attendance, which is not a bad thing for Virginia because Virginia State University is a very important institution in Virginia, but it also is like, well, what about the folks that didn't go to a HBCU and you're just Black and you went and
you just Black as that.
You had gone to a dispensary, you was driving through the state, your car smells like cannabis, you was speeding. It wasn't even that, and you haven't even used it. It's all of the implications that happen when you are under just racial disparities, period, right? And that happens with Black and brown folks, Indigenous folks in that area. And so it's not just about you went to HBCU, but I guarantee folks that have been on that VSU campus have probably had some interactions with the police bureau or the police department around cannabis. I'm sure of it. So it should be included, but I just think we need to figure out how to ensure that we're not eliminating people that also deserve equity.
Yes, and I do agree with what you're saying. I think that the best way, we had a question of, how do you get into the lawmaking process? You join organizations that, allow for people to, you'll join organizations that allow for people to see cannabis legalization, that knows about cannabis legalization, and you just stay on your local politics. A lot of times you have at least maybe 2 weeks to 7 days before different lawmakers meet in order to basically learn more about cannabis. So I was trying to answer the question and you went away and I was like, okay, I'm going to answer this question, but yes, my thought is, did your phone die? Your computer die?
No, it's just sometimes technology does work against us, but everything shut down together and then restored itself. So I am back. But I'm sure you answered the question well. The fact of the matter is you get in really by crossing over your skills into the advocacy lane of things. And that's what we've done. You've done it from event planning and coordination and project management. I've done it on the strategy end of things. A lot of the work we did with Minorities for Medical Marijuana was in service of legislative advocacy and lobbying.
Yes. And, just being on top of your local information, your states, when they're meeting, again, like I said, 2 weeks to 7 days before they have a public meeting and public comments, they allow you to know. Go on there. I literally check my public comments website every week, like on a Monday, on a Tuesday, because at the end of the day, this is how they sneak things by, because they like, oh, we didn't know and no one said anything. But if you go in and you let them know your voice should be heard, they may not take your full recommendation, but you might get a sentence up in there too. So we should definitely jump into the thick of things, because my phone has been fire hot since New York again announced that they are legalizing. This is a long time coming though, but everyone feels like this is happening.
I'm doing a little bit of my happy dance, but it's like the universe has spoken, and we got a perfect storm of things that have allowed us to capitalize on what needs to happen. And, politics is politics. And I am personally not going to put all the shade out there, but if you've been paying attention, you know what the New York governor has been dealing with. And this is a man that has for multiple years blocked the efforts of advocates on the ground as it pertains to having an equitable legalization bill. And we have held the line and said, you know what, we'd rather not legalize then. Let's go remove more stigma. Let's go do a real decriminalization, because we've been decriminalized in New York since the 1970s, but that ain't stopped police from, again, stop and frisk, dropping people just because of the smell.
Right. Let's close some prisons.
Yes, exactly. But here we are where, lo and behold, the governor wants to finally have some movement and negotiation. Wonder why? And it don't matter why, because guess what? We are pushing on the topics that we need done. And for us, the cannabis legalization happening in New York cannot happen in an inequitable way. So I have to shout out the Majority Leader, Crystal People-Stokes, who's been carrying the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, or the MRTA, or the MRTA, depending on who you're talking to, for a number of years. I want to say 6-7 years. She's like the mother of the marijuana movement in the New York market, and we are doing the dang on thing. I think that there's a lot of news coming from the legislative arm that the work is being done, and that there is a suitable bill that won't be effectively blocked by the governor that's coming down the pipe, that's going to get voted on, and we believe we have a strong opportunity to pass. But again, we've got to keep the pressure on, and the pressure needs to be on Black leaders specifically who still don't get it and thinking, oh, y'all just want to smoke. You need to get on with the train and understand what's happening. If you need to be educated, I have a workbook that'll help you, but also we got 70 episodes that'll help you get in the know. We've been doing this for a while. Okay.
We got some deja vu from New York as far as I'm concerned, because every year around this time, we always hear word that the governor is ready to legalize, since he finally realized cannabis was not a drug and it was medicine. And I'm so glad we held the line, because now we have a good hand. You know what I'm saying? We have a full house. So ultimately, I'm feeling excited about what's happening in New York. I mean, shout out to our sister Imani, as she really, really reminds me that the East Coast is popping 10, and that I shouldn't necessarily run to the West Coast, because the East Coast wants to come online and they want to do things right, and they want to make it accessible. It's just cold as heck up there. And, I do agree that, a lot of lawmakers do not know anything about the plant. They do not know that the plant has this broad spectrum of things that help us be healthy, that is medicine, and can be used in so many different ways. But ultimately, I believe that this politician, as far as Crystal Peoples Stokes, what she's done in New York, she's learned about it. Okay. She's asked the scientists, she asked the advocates, she's asked patients. So she really learned about cannabis. And this is why this bill is number one in the country right now, hands down.
And to your point, it has evolved. It didn't start from where it was, 6 years ago and not learn with the industry. And that's what I appreciate not only about the majority leader, but also Senator Liz Krueger, who is the co-sponsor on the Senate side. And the fact of the matter is it has evolved. Meanwhile, for a long time, the governor had a bill, the CRTA, and it did not really change much in the 2 or 3 years we were seeing it. And it hadn't really changed at the beginning of session this year. But now he done changed his mind in some things, and we're appreciative of that. And we're, of course, interested in making sure we push the envelope on getting exactly what we need in this bill, which is equity from day one. That's what we've been saying for multiple years. And if New York legalizes and New Jersey's doing some things right, we now finally have some real monopoly money we're going to be working with.
This money.
No,
like, what you was trying to throw that on? How many zeros? How many zeros?
Exactly. No. But no, also that means we have a need to get the legacy markets involved. New York is the number one legacy market in the world, not the country, the world. And so if we do not do this right in New York, if we do not properly have legacy to legal transition and conduits, we're going to struggle still. And so I appreciate that they've been very conservative on their revenue projections, as they should be. And until we see the thing really roll out, who they select to be at the helm, I'm gonna be real.
Word on the street is that they looking for more diversity for their cannabis or a board or office that they're putting together. So just so everyone's clear, when y'all like, how do we get in the process? How do we get in? They are looking for people that want to be a part of the government to help run cannabis, and they want diversity.
Yes.
Outside of the diversity office that they will have.
Yes, there'll be a chief equity officer, but you know what? We need diversity at the helm, and I'm pushing for that. I'll say for the record, I do not believe that the current lead for cannabis in New York has enough competency around it and understanding of equity as well. And so those two things are things that could make a market fail. It's too big, and it's not too big to fail though, but it is too big to mess up out the gate. And so we need a stronger operator and leader at the top.
Did y'all catch that tea? Did y'all catch that tea? Because that was some real tea there. We see it happen in New Jersey. We know it can happen in New York. So, you caught the tea. If you team Dawson, you know where Dawson stands. And so, I'm so glad you guys joined us. But New York. I mean, New York is looking real fine for the summertime. I'm going to tell you that right now. Rooftop parties and a legal joint. Here I am. That's a great way to get out of COVID.
I know. And guess what? New York, this bill, for a long time, one of the biggest issues, this bill has home grow in it. Okay. It has home grow. It has a on-site consumption licenses. It has the things that we talk about and we know we need, not just for the culture and for the fun, but to be honest, for the science as well. I want a nice, I would love this. I would love a nice office space that I can also consume cannabis. You already know how it would be. Yeah. It would be great to have a co-working space that was the vibe, that was the experience. And that's what New York and I think parts of New Jersey can absolutely bring.
Yes, well, East Coast, I'm coming back, okay? Because y'all are speaking my language, and you're right. And I'm so excited because these lawmakers, they listen, they implement it, and now the number one unregulated market is about to be the number one regulated market. And it's also the reason why everyone comes to America anyway, period. So, like one of those things. But thank
Clearly,
you
we're
guys.
New Yorkers.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm a New Yorker with Southern charm, so I'm trying to hope the South gets it together, but I have no faith.
You
No,
are hilarious.
I have no faith. But thank you guys for joining us. We went over a little bit because we definitely wanted to kiki and catch up, and we missed you. So many things are happening in cannabis. And next week, the tea is going to be even hotter because we're going off the government and we're talking about all these big multi-state operators. Okay.
Yes. Okay. But why don't you tell folks where they can follow you? You want me to tell? Well, everyone knows you can find me at Dashita Dawson on IG and on Twitter, of course. And I will pass the mic back to Ice.
Oh, yes. So listen anytime on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, SoundCloud, everywhere. We are streaming, and follow me, Ice Dawson, at Cannabis Socialite on IG. And make sure you follow, like, and share She Blaze, y'all. Okay, get the word out because we are blazing in the cannabis community, and we are bringing all the cannabis news, culture, and tea, honey. So definitely share our video. Thank you so much for watching.
Okay, Ice. All right. We got to get this week started. We won, now we work. It was great seeing you, and I cannot wait to see you guys again next Saturday at 12.